This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 302 of the Community Working Group. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we're talking with members of the Drupal Community Working Group about who they are, what they do, and what they're currently working on. I'm John Picozzi, and joining me today is Donna Bungard, a member of the Drupal Community Working Group and newest addition to the conflict resolution team. Jordana Fung, also a member of the Drupal Community Working Group since 2017. Mike Anello is currently the chair of the Drupal Community Working Group and has been on the CWG, which is the acronym for that, just so you guys know, since 2016, so about almost 5 years. And Alex Burrows, last but not least, a member of the conflict resolution team and has been on the CWG since 2018. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm John Picozzi, and joining me as usual is Nick Laughlin. Nick, what's going on with you this week?
Not too much. So, as people have been following the show, they know I've been having some problems with my computer. So I finally got a new hard drive and reinstalled it this weekend. And I have to say, it's much more pleasant to reinstall when it's planned than when it's unplanned, although it's still a major pain to reinstall everything and get everything configured. But so today's been spent, remembering all the tools that are missing. But since I had the other hard drive, it wasn't, a hard crash. I can just kind of pop over there and get all the settings pretty easily. So like I said, it's been a lot smoother because it's been planned.
Nothing says happy birthday, America, like new hard drives. Just throwing that out there. Coming back for her second, or actually to finish her first stint as a guest host. This is her third episode. Fatima, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. What's new with me this week is I'm testing out a mechanical keyboard. So we'll see how that goes. It's been a few years.
Awesome. That's going to be, Nick has a mechanical keyboard and it's loud. So, the mute button is your friend, just saying.
Sounds good.
Coming to us live from his parents' basement. Mike, what's going on with you this week?
I am, this is the typical end of a 3-day weekend where I really took a weekend. I actually had a great sports weekend. I went to Yankee Stadium on Sunday.
Nice.
And then I saw the U.S. women's national team play last night up here in Hartford. And I'm slammed back into work today, just a full freaking schedule, including like a half day of training I'm presenting this afternoon. So I went from a lovely weekend to just full into the fire this week.
That's pretty much how Tuesdays that are Mondays work. You go at it hard, and it's good to have you in New England for the next little bit. Alex, hi, how's it going?
Hi, yeah, good. I've been doing a lot of, as Mike is well aware, React recently, React and React Native. You'd be pleased to know it's with a decoupled Drupal site, so Drupal was still there. And then besides that, over the weekend, in my specials constable role, we were looking for a high-risk missing person with the DJI M300 drone. Didn't find her, unfortunately, but had a few flight times with it.
The skill it takes to fly that thing and not end up in a tree or in the water or, losing a very expensive piece of hardware. So,
yeah.
Moving down the list, Donna, what's going on with you this week?
Oh, well, just starting in and getting to know the team over at FFW. So first week, lots of exciting people to meet, and I'm having a great time doing that. Got to come off a week of doing super mom stuff. So it was really nice to have that time, and now to get really just trying to hit the ground running as quickly as they'll let me.
Very cool. Jordana, what's going on with you?
I'm actually on some time off, and you may hear I'm overdoing it a little bit. I'm in Florida right now visiting. I'm actually from Suriname, South America, and I got caught in some rain which during my time off, I had to recuperate and get sick a little bit, but I'm doing better. So lots of vitamin C, lots of rest. So not as much wine drinking as I wanted to. But
the community working group is confusing me right now because Mike is in New England and Jordan is in Florida, and like everybody's all over the place. It's like the best thing ever. For me, Prime week, Prime Day, was last week or maybe the week before now. Got my kids some Amazon Fire tablets, and I have to say that they're pretty awesome. If you have kids and they are in need of a tablet, or you require a device for them, get them, because they allow you to kind of like section them off for the kids and age specific content and all that good stuff. So I'm working through the setup, and the kids are using them, and they're doing great. So I will give more updates on the Amazon Fire tablet as I start using it more. Let's jump into our primary topic, because we got a lot of people, we got a lot of ground to cover, and it's a good topic. So let's start off with talking about the CWG and when it was founded. Mike, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I also want to mention, I realized during the introductions, we throw a bunch of terms around that we're used to, but everybody else might not be. While the Community Working Group was founded in 2013, so that makes it about 8 years old, maybe going on 9 years old, something like that. We actually had a big change last year. I believe it was last year. Yeah, early last year, where we expanded the Community Working Group into 2 teams. One of them we call the Conflict Resolution Team, which is the 4 of us, Jordana, Alex, Donna, and myself. And that's kind of the traditional Community Working Group, what we've been doing for the past 8 years. But what we did was we created also a Community Health Team, which is completely separate from the conflict resolution stuff that we do, but mainly focused on proactive community health things, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So I just kind of wanted to define those 3 things, where the Community Working Group is now like this big umbrella over these 2 smaller groups, the Community Health Team and the Conflict Resolution Team.
So what do those 2 teams do? And it sounds like the Community Health Team might have a newer role, whereas the Conflict Resolution Team kind of does the CWG work. What is that work, and what's the new role?
Yeah, so I mean, the Conflict Resolution Team, this is the same stuff that we've been doing. If there's a conflict in, somewhere in the community, either from an in-person event or an issue queue or, anything like that, that comes directly to the 4 of us and only the 4 of us. And then we kind of work as mediators to hopefully solve these situations. The Community Health Team, came about because there was all this proactive stuff that we wanted to do, but we've always been a very small team. The Conflict Resolution Team, by its nature, has to be very tight, very focused, very close, very open with one another. So we're very careful about expanding that team, as Don is going to talk about in a few minutes. And we have this backlog of proactive community health initiatives that we really wanted to pursue. And that was really the impetus for creating the Community Health Team. So the Community Health Team has 21 members at this point. We have folks working on events. We have folks working on workshops. We have a number of subject matter experts that the Conflict Resolution Team can call in on an as-needed basis. A lot of that has to be involves cultural, or we have like an industry special subject matter expert. So if we have an issue that potentially affects a Drupal company, a company that's involved in Drupal, we may not have the expertise to understand all the nuances. We can call upon a subject matter expert. So we just kind of wanted to make all that proactive stuff, the subject matter experts. We have a number of ambassadors for the greater open source community, as Jordana can mention in a few minutes. Events and the DA. We wanted people in those roles different than the four of us, because the four of us, or I shouldn't just say the four of us. Prior to Donna, George DeMette had been our chair and he was one of the original members of the CWG. It can be a very time-consuming job, and we would never get to the stuff we really wanted to get to, which was the proactive stuff. Okay. So think of the community health team as more proactive, and the conflict resolution team as more reactive side of things.
So like, just out of curiosity, you had talked about subject matter experts and bringing in, folks when needed for certain topics, certain industries, and that sort of thing. I'm assuming the CWG is vetting those people and curating that list of folks.
Holy cow! Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're so protective of personally identifiable information and people who come to us with potential issues, that we are extremely careful about bringing subject matter experts in. In some cases, we absolutely have to. If it's a language issue, we'll bring in a translator to help with that type of thing. But we absolutely try to limit access to information because a lot of times what we're dealing with are sensitive issues between individuals. And if we are not a trusted group in the community, then folks are not going to want our help. So we have to maintain a very high ethical standard in order for people to trust what we do.
We also have a different code of ethics that we ask everybody that works with us to abide by. So we mention all of this, that all of the privacy work we do, the work with privacy, all of that is also something that they have to agree to before working with us.
Given that, how do the two teams meet? Do you all meet together, or do you have separate meetings? I understand that the crisis resolution probably has its own small meeting, but does the whole team meet as well?
Yeah, so the conflict resolution team, we meet once a week, and the full group meets once a month. The two meetings are not intertwined. There's never conflict resolution business discussed at the community health team meeting. For the most part, the conflict resolution team hasn't really changed from before the creation of the community health team. I guess really the only thing that's changed is we don't really talk about as much proactive stuff. We have more time for the reactive stuff.
So you said you meet once a week. Is that like an hour? And are you always behind on taking, you said there's a backlog of proactive stuff, but is there like always something going on in the community that you have to kind of help take care of? Or is it like, sometimes it's just prep and then, suddenly something will happen and you guys kind of have to get the parties together and find out how to resolve it?
I don't think we've ever canceled a meeting because we don't have something to do as far as the conflict resolution team. Yeah, we do go through periods of where things are lighter versus heavier. But the one thing that's usually consistent is we normally have several long-running issues. And if there's a knock on the conflict resolution team, which I'm happy to own up to, is we take our time. We are not rushing to solve anything, because a lot of times these issues did not happen overnight, so they're not going to be solved overnight. So they often involve a lot of discussion, a lot of thought, a lot of communication. So our typical meeting is probably 60 or 70% just reviewing the ongoing issues that we're trying to just plot along and nudge people in better directions. And then if we have new issues, we're getting maybe 2 or 3 new issues a month. Some of them are actually very easily solved.
I'm curious about, maybe Donna, you can answer this. I'm curious about the type of issues that, obviously without, breaching anybody's privacy, but what types of issues end up in your lab?
I think there's a pretty wide array. It can really just depends on what is happening in the community, or again, some of them are very simple. Some of them, are longer going. Some of them, it's just a matter of helping be that communication. Our internal meetings are a lot of co-working and really becoming empathetic with the users and who is talking and who is responding and how all those interplay together. So it's a lot of that collaboration, that co-working, that empathy, and that communication to make sure that whatever the type of issue it is, it just moves forward.
So we actually did a year in review for 2020, and we actually compiled some statistics on this as far as the types of issues.
Perfect.
Where the conflicts took place, issue queue versus, in 2020, obviously we had little or no in-person events. So, that wasn't too difficult. But yeah, so our 2020 year in review actually compares 2020 and 2019, and we hope to do this type of review moving forward.
That's a great idea. So Jordana, what are some of the greatest successes of the conflict resolution team, would you say?
Speaking of the community working group as a whole, because now we're kind of split up, but before we started some of the ongoing things we're doing right now, I think one of the best, the thing we love the most in the community working group is the Aaron Winborn Award. It's where we recognize a community member who goes above and beyond in service to the Drupal community. And that's such a great way of where we're doing something positive for the community. We're recognizing people that have a great impact on a community. One of the other things that we're really happy about is the creation of the community health team, where we can do these proactive things that we've been wanting to do for so long, but sometimes you get caught up in the proverbial weeds, and where we have all of these things planned and none of it really gets as much attention as we would want it to. And now with the community health team and this amazing group of people, volunteer members, they're taking initiatives, they're working it out, they're going at it. It's amazing. It's wonderful to see. We've also done a few different workshops, which we really thought were very helpful for the community. That was when we still had in-person events. We did a DrupalCon. One was a leadership training, and one was about effective and inclusive communication, which was super interesting because you had community members where we were addressing certain issues that were ongoing and finding quicker solutions to them that were kind of implemented as well. So these things sometimes have a ripple effect in different parts of the community, which is really great. We've also started a few other initiatives, such as this is what we were talking about is we have an open source community health discussions where we invite different members of different open source communities to kind of talk about pain points and learn from each other. So we don't want to be siloed, and we want to have different perspectives. So we've come up with this idea. Like we said, like sometimes we've had these ideas mulling around in our collective brains for so long, but then we have people from the WordPress community, from the modded community, you might have to help me out, guys.
Typo 3
Civic CRM. You have quite a few communities that kind of come together and discuss how to grow communities better, like how to make how to make sure that the community stays healthy, how to do code of conduct enforcement, how to create good code of conduct in the first place.
So are you guys maybe the health group is part of this? Do you guys try to measure the health of the community as well as promote the health? Like, what kind of metrics do you guys look at? Like, if you were to look at the Drupal community, I mean, holistically, I would say it's pretty healthy. I mean, there's certainly areas that need help, but is there like a quantitative way to look at that and say, like, yes, we have these metrics to prove that it's healthy or declining? Or
I'll just say that's pretty much why we are starting to do the annual reports the way that we're doing them, so that we have a metric. Because otherwise, short of, I don't think that we want to do sentiment analysis on every single comment in the issue queue. That might be a lot of work. But we really don't have a metric other than anecdotal. So the one quantitative thing we can do is look at the issues that come our way and use that as some type of measuring stick for whatever it's worth.
And community health is kind of it's a broad term. So if you ask one community member, they'll describe it as something different maybe than another. But we are trying to work on this, for example, especially the psychological safety and the safety in general of the community members. And I think there's still a lot to do. we've worked on it pretty well. We've been working on it, and we're doing a pretty good job at trying to get better and continually work on it.
I think one thing that a lot of community members, especially if the Drupal community is the only open source community that you have a lot of exposure to, is, we are definitely on the leading edge of community health for open source projects. It is absolutely not uncommon for other open source communities to come to our community working group and ask for advice and assistance. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to start these open health discussions, which Jordana is leading, not only to provide assistance, but also, every time we talk to another open source community, we learn something. So once we kind of had 2 or 3 of these calls, it became like, why isn't there a group of people who meet regularly to discuss this stuff? And so that's kind of what we're doing now. And, I know sometimes, especially, a lot of people don't even think about the CWG unless something horrible is happening, right? So, we really think that, the way that we interact with the Drupal community is very different than the way that other code of conduct related entities react with their open source communities. And I think that's something that the Drupal community as a whole doesn't, give itself enough credit for. Something
that kind of keeps pinging me in the head, and I don't think we've talked about this in detail. So the community health team, right? So it is, would you say a large portion of what they're focused on is around mental health, or are you guys doing some sort of physical health component as well?
So
I was gonna say maybe Alex, maybe you can answer that question.
So the community health, we do talk about mental health, but we don't overly go into it. It's more, it has come from us as the conflict resolution team, where we've actually gone and had our workshops where mental health has been raised, and we have done workshops along mental health, helping out to make people more aware that mental health is a big issue, especially in this day and age. And that has rolled into the community health team, where it has arisen in various meetings. But it's more to make the awareness of mental health out there, and to kind of offer the support and the guidance, which we have these mental health trainings for. And we've had, prior to DrupalCon being cancelled in person, we were going to have a actual kind of a weekend away workshop, but that was all cancelled due to COVID. So it is something that's on our radar, and it's something that we are focusing on, and it does come up in our meetings. And a lot of the issues we do get reported to us from the conflict resolution point of view does have some aspect to mental health in there, but whether that's from burnout or just how the folks are coming along. And we have an understanding of that, and we know that it's, you can get, you're working on some code, you submitted your code, and someone else is arguing about it on the issue queue, and then that hits a nerve, and then that can affect your mental health. So we are fully aware of all that. Yeah,
I think health also could be in the more general term of community health, is in communication. Sometimes people aren't aware of how they are communicating, and we make sure that everybody's communicating in a healthy way, that those communication channels are actually open and available, right? So it's quite a, like we said, quite a broad term, but some of it is just also supporting each other. So certain teams supporting each other. If you have the camp organizers group, the working group. That they also have, like, if they have any questions, that they can like lean on the community health team. And we have April Sides in the community health team, and she's also part of that working group. So
would that be like the camp organizers? One of the things when you're organizing camp is you have to come up with a code of conduct. So is that one of the things that you guys help like guide people if they have questions about that, or is it even like if somebody broke their code of conduct, you help them figure out how to approach the person?
Yeah. Yes. Essentially all of it. We try to support them as much as possible. One of the other initiatives was the Auto Tech Code of Conduct enforcement training, because the code of conduct, it's great that you have it, but you need to be able to enforce it. So that was something that was very much, I think, needed and wanted. Everybody that participated in it, so we did too, still got a lot from it. So the code of conduct, sometimes people need help with some of the language, adopting some of the language for the code of conduct we have in the Drupal community. And sometimes it's enforcement, and sometimes it's, okay, we tried to deal with this, but now this is becoming a bigger issue and we need your help. So that's definitely also something we do. So code of conduct stuff is generally in the conflict resolution team's purview as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we provide we have a code of conduct template for Drupal events, as well as a playbook, a code of conduct playbook for Drupal event organizers, so that they can better handle any potential issues. We kind of give them like step by step, if they need that type of assistance.
So, Jordana, before we move off of the successes of the CWG, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. And do you happen to know off the top of your head how many conflicts the CWG has helped to resolve?
Forever, ever?
Forever, ever. All time stats here.
No, actually, but we can get back to you on that, because we have some of our reports where we have some of these numbers when we started gathering them. So this is one of the ones where I wanted to say one of our greatest successes it is these smaller conflicts that we help resolve. Sometimes it's just making people aware of their impact. So to remind people that intent does not equal impact. So they might have the best intentions in the world, but the impact of their words or actions are doing the opposite. And sometimes they need that different perspective and that switch to see that. And it's super amazing and rewarding when you see that click.
That's a great phrase. I don't think I've ever heard it put that way. Intent doesn't equal impact.
Oh, it's been thrown. I think Fatima has said it many times as well. So it's been there. I will not take that. So
you heard it here first. I'm talking Drupal. Jordana coined the term intent does not equal impact.
No, definitely not. But it's one of the best ways to describe it. And I think that's how sometimes it clicks with people, where they're realizing that even that they try to do their best, it's kind of, it's not doing what they want to do. And then we try to explain to them, we're trying to help you get the impact you want, right? That you're intending. So sometimes it's helping people, nudge people in the right way to help them see that and that. And when that goes well, it's amazing. So we've had some of these bigger, heavy issues that have spanned years. And then when it starts going the right way, it's amazing.
So Donna, I'm gonna throw this question to you. If I'm all in and I want to become a member of the community working group, how do I go about doing that?
Well, first you'd reach out to a current member and talk to them, ask them questions, let them know what you're interested in, what kinds of things you're identifying in the community and want to help with. And then the next step would be to join that community health team. And the health is, as I said, it's, as we've said before, it's about having a healthy organization and helping the individual stay in it, healthy within it, and kind of leaning in and showing where, play to your strengths, learn from the team, and just keep going. And then if you want additional involvement over time, great. Really how you proceed will just kind of be a little bit organic. And
so
then
where you mentioned that I would imagine that joining the team means joining the health group, at least in the beginning. I mean, as Mike said earlier, the resolution team is a little bit more sensitive, has to be a little bit more close knit, but you mentioned that the health group meets monthly. Is that on Slack, or is there like a Slack group or?
There's a Slack channel for the larger team, and we go ahead, we talk there. We meet monthly via, is it Zoom or Meet? I'm actually Zoom. So we meet monthly there. We talk about the different initiative, different sub teams are going on. If you're a part of a different initiative, We recently put out nudge templates that are very generic, kind of, hey, I feel that this comment has bias content in here. Just, it's a generic reminder to not call anybody out, but to just kind of nudge a conversation back in a more positive or constructive manner. So, for example, that committee, we met once or twice a week until that was completed. Probably, I think it was once a week, but that was separate. So subcommittees might need to meet a little more frequently to get the work done. But just like with the both teams and then the subcommittees too, it's all a lot of co-working, communication, and identifying what's next to take on.
So I think Mike had already mentioned the time commitment, but what kind of time commitment is it to be on the community working group?
The health team is a few hours a month in my experience. I'm sure there are some people who are on more committees than I was or what have you, at which point it might have been slightly larger. But in my experience, that was a couple hours a month. Whereas a conflict resolution team, once you get into that level, it's more on a few hours a week of a commitment, not only meeting time, but there's follow-up, there's communications, there's, if you take something on, it's no big deal.
For the resolution team, are you guys pulling people into calls to talk with them, or is most of the communication with, I don't know what the word would be, the people having the conflict?
The community members.
Community members. So are those generally done over email or in the issue queue, or are you inviting them to a call?
To all.
Case by case. It's a case by case basis. It's adapting to the needs of the situation. And I think that's one thing I've really been impressed with joining this team, is how adaptable everyone is.
Well, all that being said, we definitely, when we have, interpersonal issues, we definitely want to do like audio, video, visual calls with people. It's by far the most effective way for us to communicate with people. We get the truest sense of what's actually going on when we can see each other's faces. People can be brave behind a keyboard. And you may not get the nuances, especially if you're dealing with different cultures.
Anybody that's been on Twitter can understand that.
Yeah.
I think it's a translation aspect as well.
It's also a thing about remembering that sometimes it's easy to think, this person's just trying to, be difficult. And then when you're talking to each other and you see the human looking at you and talking to you, you're realizing, okay, this is just somebody else dealing with their own problems, dealing with their own things. And this has nothing to do with me.
At the end of the day, it's one of those things that everyone is legitimately trying to contribute their best stuff in their best work, and they want the best. And it's just trying to help people communicate in such a way that that's an alignment. And if it's not, how can we help facilitate communication that'll bring things into alignment?
So I'm going to go a little off script here. I'm coming back to something Mike said earlier. So it sounds like, if you're on the conflict resolution team, you're possibly jumping in pretty rapidly when an issue comes up, depending on how hot, for lack of a better word, the issue is. But Mike also said that you guys like to really think through things, and as you should. These things are not. They're not quickly resolved, right? In most cases. How do you kind of defuse that early tension when you're coming into an issue, a conflict that could be kind of pretty charged, and you may not have an actual resolution to it for a month or two? Are there steps that you guys take to kind of de-escalate that situation?
More often than not, just the fact that we are involved and we're talking to all parties, and we let them know we're going to get back to them in a 2, 3, 4 days, that provides like the time for people to just calm down and get a little bit of perspective. So just the fact that we are very methodical, I think, helps with, decharging most situations. Now, that being said, there are absolutely situations that occur where we have to get involved immediately and restrict someone's access to something temporarily, or get involved and say, hey, what you're doing is not cool, please stop. But the vast majority of what we deal with, once we're involved and we kind of set the tone and the pace, people are usually willing to follow our lead on our process.
Okay. And then just to circle back to my original question about joining, the community working group, in specific, joining the conflict resolution team. Now, Donna had said that, you join the health team, you kind of work in there a little bit. Is there some sort of application process or some sort of interview process for joining the conflict resolution team? Because I imagine that team's got to be kind of like a very curated, close-knit group of people. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's a pretty high bar. And rather than me talking about it, I think Donna should talk about it because she just went through it.
Well, thank you for saying the high bar part. Now, basically, it's you start with a health group, get to understand, see where your skills are, learn in, make sure you're comfortable working with these things. I also recommend the code of conduct training to help you really frame how you're going to be looking at issues moving forward. But then there's a written piece, there are interviews, there's a lot of discussion. I shared a lot of information about, frankly, things from even my personal life that have drastically changed my emotional intelligence over the last 5 years, and things of my experiences and what my perspective is, not saying that I'm right and that I'm awesome, but where my empathy and my understanding and my expertise can be a benefit to the team, as well as just some pretty hard questions of, can you be respectful enough to keep your mouth shut? Because these are people's feelings in their lives and their careers. And can I be respectful? And all of that has to play in. And then at the end of the day, when it's the four of us talking about stressful situations and I say something foolish, can I laugh at myself when I realize what's come out of my mouth? Which anyone who's hung out with me at a Drupal camp knows that's usually my MO, is I say something and then I go, wait, I meant it like this. So it's that balance. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I'll say, and on the other hand, the members of the conflict resolution team have to be comfortable with each other enough to have very difficult conversations. We need to be able to call each other out if we disagree. We need to be able to tell each other that you're getting a little bit too emotional with this issue, or you need to take a break, or we need to have complete openness and honesty and understand that it's well, I don't want to say it's not personal, but we have to be able to hear what each other is saying and understand and trust that, they have the best interest in mind for each other as well as for the team. And that's why it's so difficult to bring new members on. And that was kind of the ulterior motive for the community health team. We want to use that community health team as an on-ramp to this team. And by getting to know people over a longer period of time, it's accomplished the goal so far.
So that was one of my questions too. Is it Donna, you had mentioned a couple of interviews and some discussions, is it a self-regulated group? Obviously you guys have say in the matter, but does the Drupal Association board have say in it, or is it just completely self-governed like most community working groups?
We have, oh, go ahead, Donna.
No, go ahead. I know I was reviewed by something, but truth be told, I'm sitting here trying to pull up the name.
We have a review panel that is there to make sure we are held accountable to somebody or something. So the review panel right now, it consists of the two community elected board members and an outside member that the Drupal Association recommends. And that right now, that's Jono Bacon. So these are the three members, that kind of if their community member, for example, is not happy, they can contact the review panel and make sure that they take a look into the process, for example. And whenever we want to add a new member, the review panel needs to give an okay.
As podcast listeners know, I'm a little bit of a John O. Bacon fan, so his talks on conflict resolution are great. So you can also get his book. I keep this nearby just in case anybody's watching or needs to know.
Yeah, we'll have a link to the show he was on in the show notes as well.
Wow,
he was on last
John.
September.
Jordana wins the prize today. She said the magic word.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. The book is also really great.
It sounds like being on the community working group can be emotionally taxing and draining, especially when you're having on the community resolution team where you're having a lot of really honest discussions, and as well as on the community health team, because you're doing a lot of an emotional labor for the community. So like, how do you take care of yourselves? How do you remind each other to take care of yourselves while also continuing to do this work for all of us?
So we try to trust each other that whenever we need to take time off, we should be able to do that. But knowing the types of people that generally do this type of work, we will not. So I've had Mike yell at me in the proverbial sense that I need to probably take some time off. Sometimes there are, like we said, some issues that are very emotionally draining. So Mike and I were on one where we just needed to take a step back from other issues where the rest of the team had our backs. So that's exactly what Mike said. This whole thing about trusting each other, being able to openly talk to each other is very, very important. To be able to just feel okay to take a step back and know everything's being handled, but also to be able to say, like, I cannot deal with this issue right now because, for example, it's triggering something in me that I probably, won't be able to handle properly on a call. So we do talk to each other quite a lot, and we are very honest with each other. We try to be, but otherwise somebody will be honest for us, if that makes sense. But yeah, that support within the team is amazing.
How about you, Alex? How do you manage? It sounds like if you're a constable, is that like your secondary job, or is that? It sounds like it's another really highly stressful job that you do. Do any of those kind of skills translate to working on the conflict resolution team as well, or are they completely compartmentalized?
So special constable's a voluntary police officer over in England. So in the UK, we've got obviously normal police officers, but then you've got voluntary police officers, which it's the same as a police officer, but you don't get paid for it. So you have to do a minimum amount of hours a month. And a lot of the jobs that we attend in the police is all mental health related. So coming across these sort of scenarios, I'd say I'm kind of shielded a little bit from it, but I know that there's obviously a lot of PTSD around that kind of thing. And I know that when I need to speak to someone, I need to speak to someone. And that's always the best way to get away from being secluded from these sort of emotions. You've got to talk to someone. You can't just have it all hanging around inside you and then all of a sudden it just comes out. So a lot of the mental health aspects certainly helps with me doing my voluntary policing, but coming across some of the arguments and conflicts that we encounter on the issue queue, or we encounter from other members in the community talking about they've got issues of the community members. It kind of, definitely from what I've been taught over the 13 years I've been in the police, it certainly helps us be able to help on some of the conflicts. I know that we've had a few where we've looked at, is this actually something for us, or do we need to go to, as you folks say, law enforcement, to get involved? And the mixture of dealing with the legal side and the actual it's not legal, it definitely helps.
That's something I hadn't even thought of. But yeah, I'm sure that's something that you guys occasionally come across.
It's interesting. Right now in my head, I have this picture of the movie Negotiator, where Kevin Spacey's like an actual like FBI negotiator, but at the beginning of the movie, he's negotiating between his wife and his daughter. Like his wife's locked in the bathroom and his daughter's like doing something she's not supposed to. And I just picture Alex like, okay, he's in the queue, like responding to an issue, and then he goes to work and doing his constable job, where it's like, dealing with not that this isn't the real world, but the real world, real danger scenario. So anyway, Donna, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think it's also kind of important to mention that with the conflict resolution team, we really also make a point to share fun human life things with each other too. So it's not like a dredge where we come together and it's only to deal with heavy issues. They heard about me dragging my kids to the beach, or I'm bringing a teenager to the beach, pray for me, kind of things like that. It's the goofy, silly things or of Mike's adventures lately, or Jordana or Alex. We hear like the human side and the fun sides of things too. So it's a bond, and it's a shared mission, as opposed to a weight we have to carry. And that perspective is really, really important for how we take care of ourselves and each other, is to have that bond, to have that shared mission, and to keep being ridiculously ourselves, or at least in my case, ridiculously so. But in terms of being just outwardly human with full lives outside of these conflicts too, with each other. And being able to share that as well. That's part of the transparency. It's not only the dramatic stuff.
Mike, we talked about, having mental health resources and professionals available. Are there also substance abuse professionals available? Does the health team help in those areas where they can kind of refer people to somebody to talk to if need be?
Luckily, we haven't really had, I'm struggling to remember if we've had any substance abuse related issues. So we don't have a go-to subject matter expert for substance abuse. We do, and it's probably very important to remember, we do have I wish I knew what her title was, but we do have a subject matter expert that is a licensed mental health professional. She's a PhD of something, and I'm not even going to guess because I'll probably get it wrong. But we felt like for a number of years, that has been very important to us. And we don't often need it, but when we need it, we need it. And we don't want to spend time looking for someone. So we're very fortunate we have someone who's just an incredible person who is there for us. And if we ask her to attend like a monthly community health team meeting, she attends. So that's kind of the type of like stuff we always like to have in our back pocket, for God forbid that we need something like that.
Before we get ready to close, I just wanted to really quickly revisit something that was mentioned a little earlier. I think Donna had mentioned nudges, and I think Alex said something that you had been working on. Can you give a little bit more information about what those are, like, and how many of them there are? Like, it sounds like they're like a template for that people can use in issue queues, but I'm kind of curious about that. Are they like subject specific, or is there?
And I'm like Jordana to answer this question.
So we did create templates where we realized we were writing the same kind of things often. And we realized if we have templates, we can share them within the community so that other community members can benefit from them as well. So we have the CWG issue queue. We will link it in the show notes. Hey, learn something podcasting. Which is another thing where we say there's always ways you can help without joining the team, for example. We always ask feedback. There are these little things that you could do, for example, to give feedback on the templates, the nudge templates. Some of the templates are specific to the language that is being used, where it's just a little reminder of, hey, remember, we're a multicultural, multilingual community. Be mindful of the types of language you use, that kind of stuff. And to be able to just have that there and use it with, and to give feedback, to come up with new templates to help brainstorm on better wording. We can, like I said, we are always trying to be better. So we are always open to feedback from the community. So yeah, I think that's pretty much covered it, but please feel free to jump in, anyone.
So we have the nudges that we have authored. There are one for gatekeeping knowledge, inclusive language, ableist terms, inclusive language, gendered terms, cultural differences, and escalating emotions. They've been, we've had them published for about 6 months now. And, surprisingly, we've had to, or they've been, I don't want to say we, because technically anybody can use these. They're not hidden. They're right there. You just copy and paste it and put an issue. But they haven't been used all that often, and we have not seen a whole lot of situations where they have been needed, which surprised all of us because we felt like these things were going to be used all the time. So they're here, and we're kind of evaluating things right now, and if it makes sense to do something different with them, then we will. But we kind of wanted to get something out there because we see it on, I think I see it on Stack Exchange has something similar, just these pre-written, very generic, not calling anybody out, just messages, just intended to kind of nudge the discussion back on track.
Yeah, I like that you have different formats for them too. Like you have just text formatted HTML, makes it pretty easy to include everywhere.
Yep, and they've got a little icon there so that that they are, that they're this kind of nudge type thing. It's not someone calling someone else out. It's something that we're trying out, and we're hoping that just honestly, one of the goals is to limit the number of things that get escalated to us, right? Because a lot of times it just takes, a lot of times if you just shine a spotlight on a problem and say, hey, rather than saying it that way, say it this way, the problem can be solved. So if people can do that within the community with a nudge, that's all the better for our community.
I love the fact that you guys are also doing this all, open source in the so everybody can see most of this stuff and learn from it. And
one thing we didn't mention is the community health team meetings are recorded and made publicly available, as well as the minutes of the agenda. So if you go in the community working group we have our own issue queue. But you can watch every single one of the community health team meetings.
Awesome. So as we bring this episode to a close, is there anything else that we should know that we didn't cover that somebody wants to spend a few minutes talking about?
I think the CWG issue queue is a great place to find out ways to participate and help, even if you don't have that time commitment to say, I want to be a member and join every month. There are these tasks that we require community input and feedback from. So follow us on Twitter if you're on Twitter. Go into the issue queues, follow the issue queue. Yeah, we always want to learn more about the community and how we can do better.
One question about the issue queue, as that was just brought up. If I am having an issue with a community member, or does your issue queue have like rules and regulations about putting an issue in to not like out the person or like make it a bigger deal? The issue queues are for general community help. So if you do have an issue with a community member, we have a Google form that you can fill out that keeps everything a little more anonymous.
Can we have that for the show notes as well?
Yes, for sure.
That's perfect.
We've also seen people kind of come up to us separately, which we were fine with as well. But yeah, finding that issue through the issue form, Google form, is the best way. That
sounds way better than putting an issue in the issue queue, because I imagine that could get dicey rather quickly.
Yeah.
We'll also have links to the Drupal community Twitter and all those forums, as Nick said, in the show notes for anybody that's interested.
If something like that does get into the issue queue, and it hasn't in a long time, we unpublish. We get that stuff off there. Anything personally identifiable, we don't leave hanging around.
That makes a ton of sense. If you have questions or feedback, reach out to us on Twitter at Talking Drupal. You can also jump into the Drupal Slack channel, the Talking Drupal Slack channel on Drupal Slack, or email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And New England Drupal Camp is happening in person this year. So you can come to Providence, Rhode Island on November 19th for one of the first in-person conferences in over a year. This one-day conference will feature sessions, lunch, and an after party. You can find out more at nedcamp.org.
And if you'd like to promote your camp, just like New England Drupal Camp just did, you can do that on Talking Drupal by going to talkingdrupal.com/camp promo.
And I would like to take a moment to thank our patrons for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron by going to talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button. And patrons receive the raw, unedited show with a little bit of a before and a little bit of after show. So check it out.
Awesome. I'd like to thank all of our guests, and we are going to go through this. It might take a few minutes, folks, so bear with me. But Mike Anello, if people wanted to reach out to you to learn more or just chat, how could they go about doing that?
I am Ultimike pretty much everywhere, so I'll just leave it at that.
Cool. Nick, what about you?
You can reach me pretty much everywhere at NixVan, NICXVAN.
Awesome. Donna, how can people get a hold of you?
I'm pretty much D Bungard all over the place. On LinkedIn, I may be Donna Bungard, but it's really easy to find me. Twitter, LinkedIn, Drupal.org, Drupal Slack. I mean, I'm everywhere.
She's everywhere. Jordana, how can people find you?
I was not so smart of using the same username everywhere, but I'm Jordana on Drupal.org, and I have links to everything there. But I'm also on Twitter and at Jordana_F, I think. Like I said, I'm going to try to be better at that. I'm going to up my social media game, I think.
There you go. That's what we aim for here on Talking Drupal, upping people's social media game. Alex, how can people get a hold of you if they need to?
All the same. It's A Burrows on Twitter, Drupal.org, Slack, etc.
Awesome. Fatima, what about you?
Sugar Overflow, Twitter, or Drupal Slack, please.
And last but not least, I'm John Picozzi. You can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi, as well as Drupal.org. And if you're interested in learning more about EPAM, you can find out about EPAM at epam.com.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.